Welcome to Navajo County Connection. I'm District 5 Supervisor Dawnafe Whitesinger, and today we have a special guest. I think it was last month, we kind of switched things around and got an opportunity to hear about some of the things that my district is up to and the things that we're working on behalf of my district. And today we get to hear a little bit about Supervisor Williams. Supervisor Williams is this year's chairman of the board, and I have loved working under his leadership. And as you get to know him a little better, I'm sure that you will also commend his leadership. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. I know that the community is probably very familiar with you, but give a little bit of background. Who are you? Who's your family? And how did you start with the county?
Sure. So I represent District 4, which is going from west to east is Heber Overguard, Clay Springs, Pinedale, Linden, most of Show Low, and then a small portion of Lakeside. Mm-hmm. So those are the communities I represent. My wife and I, we have 4 children. My wife and I have been married for almost 19 years. She's the best person I know, and grateful to be her companion. Our kids range from age 6 to 16, 2 boys, 2 girls. So we're right in the thick of it, raising a family and having a great time. I've been on the Board of Supervisors for a little more than 3 years now. I was appointed to the board midterm. Dave Tenney had been the supervisor in District 4 for about a decade. Before that, his father, Lewis Tenney, had been the supervisor. When Governor Ducey was elected, he reached out to Dave Tenney and asked if he would be part of his administration. He offered him a position heading a state agency. And I've known Dave for the 11 years that I've lived up here, and he had reached out to me and asked if I would consider finishing his term. It took a little bit of thought to decide whether or not to step in and finish that term, but in February of 2015, I stepped in and finished his term, and then at the end of 2016, I was elected by the citizens of District 4 to a 4-year term, so I'm beginning my 2nd year on that term. I'm an attorney by trade. I worked as a prosecutor out of law school in the Valley. I was in private practice for about a decade, and currently I work part-time as a Superior Court judge in a neighboring county, and then on the Board of Supervisors here in Navajo County. So that's probably more than anyone wanted to know, but that's a little bit about my background.
Yeah, I think it's important that people understand, I guess, our family life, the things that, are important to us, our career. I think it influences how we make decisions, and I certainly have seen that with you in serving on the board. For instance, your background in the judicial system and how that works, and us in the county, meaning us, when I say us, investigating, how do we look at the judicial system, especially when we're looking at the juvenile court system or the juvenile system itself, and how do we make important decisions that impact not only juveniles but families. So I saw how that voice came in and was really important to how we made a decision. If you look at the makeup of the board currently as it is, if you were to try to get 5 people to be representative of an entire county, the cultures, the people, probably as best as you can, the current board of the 5 members are pretty representative of the makeup of the county. And we have on the Board of Supervisors, we have the longest continuously serving supervisor in the state. We have a member of the Board of Supervisors who's also part of the Navajo Nation Tribal Council. We have a member of the board that's from the White Mountain Apache tribe yourself, that's an educator. We have one that's been in the private sector his career. And then you have myself with the background in the justice system and the courts, and really those different perspectives are all healthy and each contribute something. One of the biggest costs
in the county budget surrounds public safety and the courts. And so it's nice, I think, to have that perspective and maybe understand it a little bit differently, or see it through a different lens. That's helpful, I think, to have the different perspectives. But, every member of the board brings a tremendous strength to the board with just their background in life.
I certainly agree, and I certainly have seen how that's reflected in some of the decisions we've made or conversations we've had, or how that's influenced, I guess, programs we may have supported, and that diversity and perspective has been an asset to us. So in thinking about, and you've talked just a little bit about this in the concerns that we've had through the judicial system, but what about your district? What are some of the things that are concerning you or facing the district that you're in?
So, and maybe to answer that, I'll back up, and a lot of times people ask me, what does the Board of Supervisors do? And the best way I can explain it is that the Board of Supervisors is to the county what a city council would be to the city. Mm-hmm. Now, county government's a little bit different than city government, though, because at the city level, you have the city council that oversees the judges, the chief of police, the city attorney, etc. Those people are hired by a city council. At the county level, the Board of Supervisors doesn't necessarily, we don't oversee the sheriff. He's elected by the people. We don't oversee the judges. They're elected by the people. We don't oversee the county attorney. He's elected by the people. But we do set their budget. And so when you talk about issues relative to District 4, one of the things that was a great partnership that was needed was last year the city of Show Low and the county joined together for a public safety building. Mm-hmm. Where the services of the sheriff's office and the services of the Show Low Police Department could be housed in one building and pool resources together. It was a great example of partnership. So public safety is always an issue, and we felt like that was a good partnership. The largest unincorporated area in the county is Heber-Overgaard, mm-hmm. which is in District 4. Clay Springs, Pinedale, Linden, also unincorporated communities. Roads out there, maintaining roads is always an issue. We live in a beautiful region. Forest health is always an issue. Not long ago, the city of Show Low was on a pre-evacuation notice for the Cedar Creek fire, and then portions of your district and my district were actually evacuated. Mm-hmm. And so forest health is an issue. I learned early on, right after I was appointed, I learned a great lesson about how decisions or the influence of a member of the Board of Supervisors, how it can impact an individual. And I learned something from it, and I'll just share briefly the experience. I had someone reach out to me from Heber-Overgaard. He was a disabled vet. He was on a fixed income. He'd gotten behind on his property taxes. And the way the legislature has set it up is if someone gets behind on their property taxes, someone else can come in and pay those property taxes and go through a process to foreclose on their home. Yeah. And he called, he was being foreclosed on. It's not something that I have direct ability to do much for him, but I thought, let me ask some questions, and I reached out to our treasurer at the time, who was Manny Ramirez, and said, here's the situation, is there anything we can do? And then I learned a great lesson from him, Manny, about using a position of influence to try to help people. He reached out to the person that had the tax lien, and to their credit, once they heard the situation, they said, you know what, I'll work with him and help him get current on his taxes and not foreclose. And so he was able to stay in his home. And I learned a great lesson from Manny and from the people involved, that decisions we make can impact individuals. And so in the opportunities that come our way, we look at the district as a whole, we look at the county as a whole, but we also look for opportunities to try to help people individually in their lives.
I think you're certainly right. I think one of the things that always comes out is being reminded that these are our friends, these are our neighbors, these are the people that we live with in our communities. And for us to be able to support or to help them in some capacity is part of our role, as I guess, in serving in the Board of Supervisors. And I think sometimes it is difficult to explain, well, what does that look like serving on the role of a Board of Supervisors? Because one day it could be about approving the budget for the county as a whole, but how do we get to that particular conversation? Because there's so many influences on our budget and how our budget becomes to get to where it is. And then the services that are provided through the county. How do we support those services, and how are we accountable to ensuring that those services are continually provided? So it's a big, I guess there's a broad conversation that happens. So I know that you've been part of some of those conversations at the state level in knowing how those dollars or how that influences our budget. What does that look like?
Yeah, so the counties are political subdivisions of the state. They're set up under the state constitution, and the intent is to bring state services to people locally. And so the county provides state mandated services, and we want to do it, have great customer service, and do it in the best way that we can. We are impacted by decisions that the legislature makes. And so of necessity, our board and other elected officials and our county management team is consistently in contact with our representatives at the state level. And portions of Navajo County are in the State Legislative District 6, and portions are in the State Legislative District 7. And each year that, since I've been on the board, our board has gone down and had face-to-face meetings with our representatives to tell the story of Navajo County and how some of the proposed legislation would impact us positively or negatively. There's also been some asks that we've made that would benefit the people here. This year, as we went down and as you know, you were there, but as we presented to our representatives, they were so appreciative of the proactive approach that we have taken that they invited us to come and present to all of the rural legislators around the state. And so we went and presented to them. We're also part of an organization, all of the board members are part of an organization called County Supervisors Association. Mm-hmm. There are 61 county supervisors statewide. We meet together monthly to talk about issues that impact all of the counties and lock arms and try to have a united voice on those issues that we're united on. And so throughout the legislative session, we're constantly reaching out to our legislators saying, here's a bill that we support, it would benefit us this way, or here's a bill that if it's passed, it's going to negatively impact us, and here's how. And we have had wonderful, open communication with our representatives, our legislators and senators, and I'm appreciative to them. So that's ongoing year-round, but especially as we approach budget season and in budget season, those conversations ramp up.
I think that's certainly true, and a big part of our responsibility in keeping those relationships open. And I've certainly seen through your leadership that we've been able to continue those conversations, and this past year was very important to our future budget and being able to have those meetings. I know outside of the state conversation, you were able to have go on the national level and have those conversations. What does that look like?
Yeah, we once a year there's a conference for county leaders nationwide back in Washington, D.C., and each year we'll send a member or two of the board back with some of our team. This year I went back with our economic development leader, Paul Watson, and we do a couple of things. We go back in connection with the conference, but we also pack in as many meetings as we can with our Arizona delegation. And so we met with Senator Flake's office twice. We met with Senator McCain's office. The group that we associated with, it wasn't just our county. We locked arms with 4 or 5 other counties that are rural that in Arizona that have some of the same issues. Our group met with Congressman Biggs, Congressman O'Halloran, Congresswoman Sinema, McSally. We met with the Chief Forester, which was a really productive meeting, I felt like, in trying to maintain healthy forests here locally. So we tried to pack as much as we could into that trip back there. I felt like it was beneficial, and we appreciate their time and what they're doing at the federal level to make decisions that will are healthy for us here locally as well.
And I think part, I guess, going back to the roles and responsibilities of the Board of Supervisors, it's really knowing the concerns of each of our districts. What are the concerns in energy? What are the concerns in economic development? Those organizations who may have, who need support in particular ways, or it's business support, and how do we provide support to those particular businesses. So all of those conversations become part of this when you go out and advocate on behalf of either the county or your particular district in need. And so I've learned that, you know, it's that listening skill. It's being able to understand each of the entities that that I guess you and others on the board, that we're responsible for being able to communicate their particular needs and advocate on their behalf.
You know, one of the things that I've observed in those that I appreciate their leadership is the ability to try to see things from different perspectives, and I think the more that we can see things from multiple perspectives, the better solutions we can come to. When there's disagreements, to do it, you can disagree without being disagreeable. I've appreciated the civility with the current Board of Supervisors. There's a respect level. I've appreciated working with our state representatives. They're always respectful, even if there's disagreements. The other thing I think is there needs to be a vision of not just where we are, but what can we become as a county. And last year, some of the challenges we had, we needed to cut $2.5 million out of a $30 million budget, and we did that. There were some difficult decisions, and I remember in one of the board meetings, as we were having some difficult discussions, recalling to my mind a story that I had heard years ago by Thomas Edison, and he was in his 60s, and his warehouse was burned up one night. All of his life's work had burned up, and he said something as he was watching his buildings burn up. He said, there's a great value in disaster. All of our mistakes are burned up. I thank God we can start anew. Now, the challenges that we faced last year, the county wasn't on fire necessarily, but there were some difficult choices. And there may be some difficult financial choices ahead of us as well, with Navajo Generating Station potentially shutting down, Choya Power Plant potentially shutting down, and it's going to require some visionary decisions and some difficult decisions to try to turn something negative into something positive. But that's the thing that I've appreciated about being on the board and our management team and the other elected officials. I feel like it's a very proactive group. It's not reactive. We're looking to try to get ahead of challenges that we see coming down the pike, and hopefully we can continue to do that in a way that benefits everyone that we represent.
I know that those are continually, I guess, parts of our conversation. Yesterday, you and I were in budget meetings, and being able to meet with our elected officials or other elected officials in their departments and hearing their particular needs, but also understanding that our future might not look as strong as it has in the past. And how do we begin to be proactive in being able to provide for the concerns and programs and services that our citizens need. So all of those things become very, I guess, crucial in those conversations. And I know that through your leadership in serving this year as our board chair, that you've guided us in being able to have those conversations with our elected officials. I think all of those things are very important in being able to understand, as Mr. Jimmy Jean would say, the 30,000-foot level. What does that look like, and what does it look like down the pike? So thank you. I appreciate all that you have done for our communities and for the county, and certainly I have loved serving alongside of you and learning from your leadership abilities. So thank you.
Well, the truth is we're better collectively than we are individually, and we're brighter collectively than we are individually, and no one person is going to have all of the solutions. And as we hear different inputs from different viewpoints and from citizens that have great ideas as well, hopefully we come to the best solution for everyone. So.
Well, I know that there is certainly lots of work that you do on the county level, city level, and in being able to help our communities and having those particular conversations that influence our budget. But I also know that there are other things that are important to you as well. And what are some of those things?
One of the things that I was involved in before I was on the Board of Supervisors, and I continue to be involved in, is the Show Low Community Fast. One of the hats that I wear is I'm an active member of the church I attend and in an ecclesiastical leadership position. And in that capacity, I've had a chance to work with other pastors in the community. About 6 years ago, we'd had a conversation where we wanted to find ways to come together and maybe work on some things in common. And the idea of a community fast came together. And here's how it works. The idea was that during one particular week during the year, we would invite people to fast for 1 to 2 meals during that week. And take the money they would have spent on those meals or more and donate those funds to a common fund, a community fund. And then 100% of the monies raised would go to help local families in need over the holidays. And so we approached Mayor Seymour from the city of Show Low and relayed this idea, and he loved it. And he said, the city is going to support this. Let's make it a community thing, not a church thing. Let's make it a community thing. We said, great. So for the last 5 years, the city of Show Low and the mayor have issued a proclamation declaring 1 week in November as the week of the fast. And the first year we thought, if we can raise $5,000, that would be a good thing. The community raised almost $10,000.
Wow! And
each year it's consistently grown. Last year we raised about $15,000. I think in total we're approaching $70,000 in 5 years that has been raised, and every penny has gone back here locally to help families in need over the holidays. Monies have gone to help pay for utilities or food or modest clothing. It's gone to organizations like Senior Center, the VFW, the Safe House for battered women and children. It's gone to the schools where teachers could identify kids in need, organizations like that. So we've done that for 5 years. In November, we'll do it the 6th year. It's been a great blessing for me to be a part of that. This Navajo County and the region that I live in is full of wonderful people. Best neighbors I've ever had, some of the best people I've ever met, and each year I'm just amazed at the generosity of people. And so the community fast is important to me. I think it's been a blessing to a lot of people, and it's a great example of partnerships and how when we choose to find common ground with each other to benefit the whole, everyone benefits. When we choose to focus on what we have in common and not focus on what we have different from each other. So I've been appreciative of Mayor Seymour, those other pastors, the businesses that have contributed, and the people that have participated in that.
I've been very impressed by the growth and seeing that particular initiative grow over the years. And it is indicative of the neighbors and people who live in our community. Because certainly it takes their investment, it takes their time, and I think that they've seen how it's impacted their local community members and families and neighborhood. So I can certainly see why that's near and dear to your heart. Is there a particular story that you remember out of that, of somebody that might have touched your heart? Or
Yeah, every year that we do a wrap-up community celebration, and there's some stories shared from organizations on how the monies were used the year before, and some of the churches perform musical numbers. The mayor always speaks at it. But there was one, it may seem like a simple story, but there was one boy that wrote to one of the school principals. I think he was a 9 or 10-year-old boy, and he got his first pair of new shoes he'd ever had. Mm-hmm. And he wrote to the principal and he said, "Dear Mr. Hall, you are my friend. Thank you for the shoes. I look good!" Exclamation point. And it made an impact for that kid to have that pair of shoes. And there's lots of stories that are great, but that's one that I thought was kind of neat.
Well, I work with young people, and it's certainly very encouraging to hear, their sweetness and tenderness come, because sometimes they don't always get the things that they need. And I'm sure, even an act of writing a thank you note is a big step for a child. Yeah. So it speaks to me in the influence that each of the individuals who've made a contribution. Well, thank you for joining us. We certainly appreciate it. And we hope that you enjoy the spring weather and take your family out and recreate or go fishing or do whatever it is that your family enjoys doing. And we look forward to seeing you on the next Navajo County Connection.